After the microwave on, Andrew.
Okay, we have returned for the finale of Castlevania. We're going to talk about the last few episodes of the season 4. This is going to be episodes 6 through 8. With me here today is Andrew Alucard Mindgasms, and I am your host, Woke Centrist, aka Dusty Cubes, aka Morningstar Centrist. So we're going to talk about these last few episodes. We're just going to go blow by blow. Episode 6, title of that episode is "You Don't Deserve My Blood," and it starts off in Styria, which is the Vampire Sisters hood. At this point in the story, Isaac is now attacking Styria with his own horde. The one that he had kind of built up starting the previous season. I notated that there was definitely an animation upgrade for this combat section because this is a lot of fighting in this episode. If you remember, Isaac, he has like this flying demon with him that he seems to like synergize his combat with. The flying demon, I can't remember if it's an actual Castlevania enemy from any of the games, but it does look similar to something I may have seen before, but I don't think it's a direct rip from the game. So there was this one notable scene during combat where there were like a bunch of vampires just like chilling in the library, studying or something. And Isaac kind of crashes in through a stained glass window into the scene, and all of the vampires are like, a human. And then Isaac snaps his fingers, and then a bunch of the flying demons enter and just massacres all of the vampires. And during this invasion, we get a scene of Carmilla, the head vampiress of this castle, and she says, quote, "What the fuck is going on?" And we see night creatures fighting night creatures.
I remember that because I had the exact same reaction at that moment in the episode.
Like you didn't know what was happening?
Yeah.
So we see that night creatures start to approach Carmilla's room, and she just kind of kung fu grips a desk and yeets it across the room with one hand, trying to show like, oh yeah, she's super strong. So she kills all the night creatures pretty quickly. They're like nothing to her. And then we see Lenore looking for Hector, and we get to see her display one of her vampire powers. She turns into like a swarm of bats. Lenore was looking for Hector because she wanted to keep him safe.
Mm-hmm.
But Hector's like, no, we're exactly where I need to be. And when he does that, he actually traps Lenore into some type of magical light prison type of thing. And at that point, we see Hector getting in contact with Saint Germain with one of those like magical mirror things. And he tells Saint Germain that he completed a task for him and not to trust Barney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting where Hector is working with Saint Germain.
Mm-hmm. So he lets Lenore know that he is in league with a group of individuals that are trying to resurrect Dracula. Then we kind of find out, oh, okay. We know that there's like this, they're like pulling threads together of these different groups that are attempting to bring back Dracula, but we didn't see that Hector was actually involved with them before.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect that I think we talked about last time, about how there are all these cults of people who are trying to resurrect Dracula. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So during that, Isaac shows up in that room, and he actually moves towards Lenore to kill her, but Hector objects. He wants to spare her life. Hector informs Isaac that he has taken steps to resurrect Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, he kind of resigns himself to Isaac so that he can exact revenge on him without consequence. But Isaac retorts and he says that revenge is for children.
Right.
So Isaac has kind of gone through this reformation, I think, I would say, in the last season, where he is fully trying to assert his own agency and not letting like his duties to Dracula rule his life.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. He's trying to not, continue on Dracula's mission after his death, like a lot of the other people and vampires who were working with him are trying to do, or just, well, I guess you could say he's kind of closer to what Carmilla is trying to doing, except he's not trying to do what Dracula was doing, but in her own way instead, and take over the human race and use them as cattle like she's going to do. He's trying to fulfill his own type of mission and find his own reason and his own like higher goal to pursue rather than just serving Dracula.
Mm-hmm. So then Isaac tells Hector to have the night creatures stand down. And this is when we find out that Hector does not have full control over these night creatures. That they are actually being controlled by the vampire sisters through these rings that they put on him.
Right, the ring that what's her name? Who basically she falls in love with Hector and he falls in love with her, and she tricks him into being her slave by having sex with him and putting a ring on him that bonds her to him, so that she is in charge of him, so that by de facto she's in charge of the night creatures that he controls. Right? What's her name?
Right, Lenore.
Lenore, right.
Yeah, she put a ring on it.
Yeah.
So, in order to wrest control from the vampire sisters, he cuts his finger off, the one that had the ring on it. And then Isaac cauterizes the wound. And he gives him instructions on where Carmilla is. And he tells Isaac that, hey, Carmilla has global ambitions and she needs to be stopped. And he hands an artifact to Isaac. And this artifact, I gotta change the battery on my Bluetooth headset here. Were you able to hear that?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. Did you hear the warning of the Bluetooth headset?
No, I didn't.
Weird that you're able to hear the warnings before, but not now.
Yeah, I've definitely heard them before. Don't know why I didn't this time.
This is a new one. Give me a second. I'm just gonna swap out the battery real quick.
All right. Yeah, that's an interesting. I think. Sorry.
Saying zippity doo dah, zippity yay.
That really was quick. Yeah,
Okay. What were you gonna say?
the changing relationship between Isaac and Hector is interesting too. Like they were more allied before, and then you could say that they were kind of drifting apart in their goals, with Isaac going off by himself and Hector still being controlled by Carmilla and Lenore. And then they come back they basically come back together at the end of the season and help each other fulfill their own personal goals.
Yeah, because we would have thought that. I think because Hector and Isaac haven't been in contact for a while. And then we did see in the beginning of season 3 that Isaac had located Hector and was still kind of like in that "I'm gonna kill that bastard" type of mood.
Yeah.
But things have changed since then. Like Isaac has been doing some philosophizing and changing his ways a bit. So now Isaac he uses I don't know what I wrote here. I can't even read it. Well, what I put was like Isaac does some type of magical thing. A light wave forms and it kills a bunch of night creatures. This also traps Carmilla within her own chamber so she can't escape it.
Right.
I think this is
right.
like this type of magic that Hector had set up. We saw him set this up at the beginning of the season where he's like writing these symbols on the walls and stuff. So it made like some type of transport system straight to Carmilla's room, but it also blocked her off from leaving, so she's trapped in there.
That's why he was that was why he was taking so long to forge his hammer that he would use to resurrect the night creatures. Is that what it was earlier in the season?
Yeah, it looks like he was trying to set up some type of system. Like, I'm not sure what he was planning to do. I think he was simply just planning to escape. And that thing that he built was meant to trap Carmilla within that room. But I'm not sure exactly why. But I knew he had ambitions to resurrect Dracula, and I assume he can't do it when he's trapped in a castle with vampires.
Yeah, that part about Isaac trapping Lenore in that kind of magic cage is interesting too, because like I said earlier that the Isaac and Hector's goals converge more near the end of the season, but before that happened, they're a little bit against each other because Isaac wants to kill all the vampires, and Hector wants to protect Lenore because he's in love with her, even though she's a vampire. But then they decide to still help each other.
Right. So we see Carmilla. She's trapped in her chamber, and there's basically just like a lake of blood inside her chamber because she's been doing that much killing. She like screams, and then like the sclera in her eyes just turn red. I don't know if this is like her super power up or something.
Kind of seems that way, maybe.
Yeah, she looks like pretty creepy, and then she also looks kind of exhausted from battle. And he tells Isaac as he arrives to eat shit and to go kill Hector. And Carmilla's this world belongs to me.
Right.
You can't be trusted. And well, this is what Isaac says: you can't be trusted, and I would always fear you and your ambitions. I have to kill you. Which is, I think they're trying to build up was that Carmilla was getting way too ambitious and overextending herself. I know they kind of talk about this more in the last episode, but we do get an extremely epic fight here in this
It's awesome.
episode. So Isaac is actually fighting Carmilla in conjunction with which seems to be like his elite night creature commandos.
Hmm.
They're not like regular night creatures, they're like souped up like commando night creatures.
Yeah.
So they slowly like wear her down, and Isaac finally scores a hit with his knife, and Carmilla starts to get swarmed by night creatures.
Right.
But she's still holding her own, though. She's still killing them because Hector is mainly backing off and letting the night creatures attack her for most of the time. But in a last-ditch effort, because she's starting to get, she's basically starting to get exhausted, and they're scoring hits on her now. So in a last-ditch effort to kill Isaac, she goes out ISIS style.
Right.
And what do I mean by ISIS style?
Like suicide style, basically.
Yeah, she just does like, she's like, I'm going to take you out with, like, you're going with me or something like that. And she, like, blows herself up.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the outskirts of town, on the way to the castle, the lesbian vampires are jostled by the explosion.
Right.
By Carmilla, who had al-Qaeda'd herself. And at that point, they're like, yeah, Carmilla's plan was a lost cause. And at that point, they also assumed Lenore was dead as well.
Hmm.
So instead of marching on towards the castle, they basically just turn around and make the best of their lives moving forward. So they completely abandoned the castle in the previous life.
Right.
And the ambitions that they were, it wasn't even their ambitions, it was what Carmilla had tasked them with, but it was Carmilla's ambition to conquer the whole world.
Right.
So Hector and Isaac, after everything is said and done, Hector says that he wants to bring Dracula back out of guilt, mainly, it seems.
Right.
But Isaac notes that Dracula was flawed and he earned his rest. And they should look forward and live their lives free of manipulation by others.
Right.
Which is kind of how they live their lives under Dracula, like being completely manipulated.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Hector was straight up lied to, and Isaac, I guess, like the cult of personality that is Dracula, he basically would do anything for Dracula, including dying for him.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is the end of episode 6. Episode 6 is just an entire episode dedicated to that fight, and it is actually a pretty epic episode.
Yeah,
And to be honest, I think out of all the combat sequences, I think that one is my favorite from this season.
It might be
Like
mine too.
I think
Although
it's better than the last bit.
Oh, okay. I don't know whether that one's my favorite or Trevor's epic fight with death on the second last episode, I think. That's a really awesome fight too.
Yeah, that one's also pretty good as well. But I really like this one. Like the whole episode was just completely action packed.
Right.
You know what? Because I remember they do all three of them come back together. You know what? I'm not going to say that this fight is the best because there's actually some pretty badass fights coming up.
Yeah, for
Now
sure.
that I think about it. So, season 4, episode 7, The Great Work. So we're going back to Targo Viste, which is kind of where Trevor and Sypha are kind of hanging out for the time being.
Hmm.
And that Russian vampire, I think his name is Ratko or something.
Right, but I think that's the one voiced by Malcolm McDowell, isn't it?
Malcolm McDowell is at Varney, I thought.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's Varney. I'm confusing him with the Russian guy.
I forget who voices the Russian guy, but Malcolm McDowell is definitely Varney / Death.
Right. Yeah.
So the Russian vampire, he finds the location of the underground courts, and Ratko and Varney have a little bit of a confrontation, and like Ratko's upset because he thinks that Varney's always taking credit for his work.
Hmm.
Ratko considers himself a soldier, but Varney just sees him as a criminal.
Right.
And there's like an interesting thing that Varney says that's kind of I guess, a foreshadowing here. But Varney tells Ratko that he's good at killing and death, and he tolerates his insolence because of that.
Right.
Because it seems that Varney is like pretty much a weak dude. Like, just kind of seems like he likes to boss people around, but doesn't like to get his hands dirty.
Yeah.
Until the end. But anyway, Trevor and Sypha demand that Zamfir take him to the underground court, and Zamfir actually agrees for once.
Hmm.
She kind of starts insulting them.
Is that the woman they meet in that town who's protecting her village, or am I confusing her with someone else?
Zamfir is the crazy lady who is protecting the dead king and queen.
Oh, okay. Right.
She fights with like 2 knives or something like that, or 2 swords. And I think Zamfir says something like insulting and arrogant to Sypha, and Sypha stalks towards her as if they're going to strangle her, but Trevor just intercedes before that happens.
Right.
Back at Drax Castle, the refugees that had been traveling from Dynasty are starting to settle in at the castle.
That's the ones who Alucard had been guiding through the forest, and they got attacked by all sorts of weird demons, right?
Yeah, like they were getting herded towards a location. And Saint Germain, we can see Saint Germain walking the halls of the castle, and he marks a symbol on a wall inside the castle. So he's doing something a little nefarious. And he finds the location of Dracula's death, which is basically Alucard's room, because that's where was it Alucard that killed him?
It was kind of
Like
I guess
I
it
think
was
was
it was Alucard who did the final blow, so to speak. I think it like he was. Well, no, he stabbed Dracula through the heart, and I think that that Belmont
Trevor cut his head
beheaded
off,
him.
I think.
Yeah, I think that Trevor Belmont beheaded him after Alucard stabbed him in the heart, and then did he just turn into ashes, or did they burn him after that too?
I think they burnt him. They
They
set
burned
him
him
on
after
fire.
that too, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
they're
the
trying to do
Alucard stabbed him in the heart. Belmont beheaded him, and then was it Sypha or one of them set him on fire?
Yeah, Sypha started the
Yeah.
fire.
Okay.
Classic. That's the classic vampire killing method.
Yep.
Dracula,
Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, for sure.
But even then, I believe Alucard just had his sword out, and then Dracula kind of walked towards him and to embrace him because he kind of wanted to die at that point.
Yeah, that was the point when he kind of had some remorse, and he had flashed back to some of their memories with Alucard as a child. And
Right.
then he kind of like you said, kind of changed his mind and just welcome death.
So so Saint Germain finds Alucard's room. So we see Alucard on the roof of the castle. And he just straight up dive bombs some kids playing outside, and he stops short of turning into a pancake on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells the kids boo, and the kids just start laughing it up. I'm like, holy crap. If I saw something like that, I'd probably shit my pants. But these kids have gone through numerous night creature attacks, so I guess that wouldn't phase them.
Yeah.
Greta, who is the head village woman, thanks Alucard for entertaining the children. And she begins to tell Alucard that they're going to need to shore up their defenses a bit at that castle.
Mm-hmm.
As who knows if the night creatures are going to continue to attack. So, as we see that night falls, a vampire caravan is marching on their location. And in one of the wagons, we see like these vampire witches appear to stow up some type of corpse, which I believe is going to be that Regis thing or whatever it's called. But back at Targo Viste, Trevor and Sypha are finally entering the underground area, and there's a bunch of treasure just everywhere, like stacks of gold, almost like a dragon hoard that's called there. And Zamfir asks them to wait. And while they're waiting, Trevor finds a unique vampire hunting weapon. It's like that. That's like a cross dagger thing.
Yeah, it's cool.
That spins. It's like the thing from. Have you seen the movie Kroll?
No.
It's like an old sci-fi movie.
No, I
I
haven't.
think we're gonna have to watch that and do a movie chat about that movie.
Sure.
Because it's weird, interesting, and somewhat ridiculous. And Patrick Stewart's in it.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So yeah, he gains a new vampire hunting weapon, and they talk about the sign of the cross and why it's effective against vampires. And his explanation was that geometric shapes tend to mess with vampire brains. So they talk about it as if it has nothing to do really of it being a religious symbol. It's just the shape of it causes them confusion momentarily.
Right, yeah, that's interesting. I'd forgotten that.
Well, which makes sense because if you've read Dracula, they talk about how Dracula's afraid of the cross, but it has nothing to do with it being tied to Christianity.
Oh,
But
I
in the
forgot
book,
that.
yeah, in the book though, they never explain why he is afraid of the cross.
Oh, okay. Where do they say that in the Francis Ford Coppola movie?
I think in the Francis Ford Coppola movie, they say that he's afraid of the cross. Well, yeah, I don't even think he's afraid of the cross in the Coppola movie because if you remember, like the beginning of the movie, he like stabs a crucifix and then just like blood pours out of it.
Oh, right.
It's such a weird movie. But I don't think the cross is actually effective against Dracula in the movie versus the books.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting. There's variation depending on what vampire book you're reading or movie or TV show you're watching or video game you're playing as to the different types of weapons that you can use on vampire. Like sometimes crosses and holy waters work on them, and sometimes there are vampires that are less religious versions and they don't work, or one of them does and the other doesn't.
yeah, there's one thing I'll note too that in the movie, there's the part where Jonathan Harker gets involved with a vampire orgy.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it's like his Dracula's wives, and they
Oh,
rip off his
right.
shirt.
Yeah, right. I do remember that now.
Yeah, they rip off his shirt and they see the cross, and then they hiss,
Right.
and then they use like some magic to melt the cross away. So I have no idea what the deal is.
Okay.
Do you remember the vampire orgy?
Yeah, I do now that you mention it. Yeah.
And one of the vampires was like a Siamese twin,
Oh, okay.
and they were connected at the vagina.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes. So where was I? Yeah. So, yeah, they asked Zamfir like, why aren't they using these vampire hunter weapons?
Right.
And Zamfir's reply was like, the royals don't allow it.
Right.
And then Trevor wants to ask the royals themselves, and he says, "Wakey, wakey, you shower of assholes." I think.
I forgot that. That's a funny insult.
And we find that the king and queen are basically skeletons.
Right.
And Trevor gets really pissed because Zamfir hasn't been offering any help to the people above ground, and they have all these resources at their disposal.
Right.
At this point, Zamfir actually admits to being insane.
Right.
And believes that dead bodies will wake up and save them.
Right.
So at this point, Sypha asks Zamfir to abandon the area. Moments later, Ratko and some night creatures bust through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next scene, Dracula Castle, explosions, oncoming attack. And that's all we see until we get to the next episode, episode 8, Death Magic. So back in Targovista, Ratko, Varney, and company start killing like the innocent people that are chilling down in the underground court. There's like a river of holy water there going through the underground court, and he simply hops over it and he says nasty stuff. Before Ratko kills the guard, Trevor steps in to intercede, and then Ratko grows some wings.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So Trevor and Ratko fight, and Sif, Cyclones, and Fear are protecting the other people from the night creatures that are ravaging the area.
Right.
And all during the commotion, Varney wanders off looking for the mirror.
Right.
So back at Dracula's castle, one of the vampire lords heads a charge on the castle. And the refugees are doing their best to hold their own. And we get some scenes inside the castle, and there's like flows of energy that are coming out and being absorbed by those markings that Saint Germain put throughout the castle.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately Alucard and Greta come to the villagers' aid. And Alucard's fighting style for this encounter, he basically splits up with his sword, and he's fighting on his own, and his sword is doing its own thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so during this episode, we see a giant monster get unleashed. Okay, the giant monster that you see here is an actual boss from Castlevania called the Gurgoth.
Okay, cool.
It's from Dawn of Sorrow. So the boss that you see here, it's weird because there is a Castlevania game that takes place in 1999 or something like that, and that's where this boss comes from. So it's not present in the earlier games. It's only present in some of the later titles. But as you see, this boss has some type of flame breath, and it's like this two-legged, weird-looking, I don't know what you want to call, like a fat T-Rex looking thing with no arms.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of does look like that. Yeah, it's weird.
And it has like its skin peeled back on its face. So when this thing rolls up, everyone falls back into the castle.
Right.
And they try to shore up the defenses inside. And that's when they discover that there's like energy streaming, and Alucard tries to track it, and he tracks it back to his bedroom. And we see Saint Germain trying to open a portal to the infinite corridor using the magic supplied by the people getting killed. So we take it shows a glimpse through the portal, and it shows Dracula and his wife. So he's trying to bring them back through the portal.
Mm-hmm. And we find out he has some ulterior motives for that too, right?
Right. So he's going to put the souls inside of a rebus. Do you remember what the rebus thing was?
No.
It was that thing that they were stitching up back in the wagon. It was like a half man, half woman, zombie corpse looking thing. As one side had a boob and one side didn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that was weird.
So Saint Germain's, he wants to use the rebus to control the corridor. And the reason he wants to control the corridor is so he can find his lost love that got trapped inside the corridor. Right now, there's a barrier between them and Saint Germain. So they're like, okay, there's nothing we can do here. So both Alucard and Greta return back to the courtyard.
Right.
Saint Germain proclaims himself as God.
Right.
And he says that he'll have sex again, finally. Saint Germain is so weird.
Yeah.
So the castle doors are breached. Alucard immediately throws his sword in the Gurgoth's mouth.
Right.
And then we go back to Cargo Viste here. So we have all-out battle ensuing in the underground court. Zamfir doesn't really seem to be protecting the people that need to be protected. But Sypha makes an ice wall to separate themselves from the innocents.
Right.
Ratko says that Trevor isn't sporty during their fight. Trevor is noticeably tired. He has been looking pretty battered throughout this season.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually. So at that point, we see Sypha just destroying night creatures with magic. I think it seems like Sypha just destroys night creatures at a rate that is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, she's got awesome magic powers. She's got superior weapons. She's really good with them too.
So she fights, and we see Zamfir's fighting as well with dual daggers, and she's actually doing pretty well against the night creatures also. Things aren't looking terribly good for Trevor in his fight. So we do get a cut to Sypha, and she takes out this like super speedy lizard thing with some lightning. And Varney's just kind of sneaking about, avoiding all combat. He's not even concerned with the fighting. So Ratko makes a boast. And he says that he was just pretending to be Varney's flunky.
Okay.
And as he's about to stab Belmont while pinned down, a woman shoves Ratko to try to stop him. And this is just a regular woman, just one of the innocent people there.
Right.
And he tells the woman, "Did you dare fucking touch me?" And then he swings for the woman, and there's a child there as well. And Zamfir goes in between them to protect them. And basically, she kind of sacrifices herself so she takes the hit. And it's like a mortal wound, I believe.
Right.
At this point, Trevor busts out the spinny cross. And Zamfir is trying to keep Ratko's attention. And as she's dying, she says, "My people will survive you." Oh, no, that's not what she says. No, that's what she says. And then Ratko's like, "I am immortal." And Trevor just says, "Nobody's immortal." Catches Ratko off guard and kills him with the spinny cross thing. I think he stabs it right in his head, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So Zamfir succumbs to her wound, and Sypha mops up the rest of the night creatures. Varney finally finds the throne room in the mirror. and Varney creates a portal to Saint Germain, and he meets up with him, and when Saint Germain meets him, he says, "Sir, I am certain your wit is as suave as your own personal stench." There's kind of this running joke that Barney smells really bad. He kind of looks
Right.
like he smells bad,
Mhm.
but you never know.
Kind of like dressed, or like his clothes are in increasingly hobo state, kind of like Trevor throughout the season.
Right. Yeah, hobo. Yeah, Travers gets pretty hobo-ish throughout this season.
Yeah.
So Trevor see that Varney um, had escaped, and they go through the mirror. The mirror is not super stable, so it doesn't dump them off where they think it will dump them off. All right. Episode 9. The endings. Dracula Castle. There's an all-out battle in this courtyard. So Alucard becomes somewhat overwhelmed. And out of nowhere, you see the Morning Star just kind of zoom past Alucard's head and hit a monster. And then you see magic just destroying people. Some of the vampires. And Alucard says, as if my day wasn't going badly enough, it's Trevor Belmont. And then the trio's reunited. So one thing I'll talk about here is the spinny cross thing that Trevor has acquired. This is an item, kind of a hybrid item from the video game. In the video game, you do get a sub weapon that is a cross, and you throw it and it spins around and it returns to you like a boomerang, which is basically what this thing does.
Right.
So it is basically straight from the video game. Alucard does sprout wings during this fight, but they're not like physical wings. They're kind of like, how do I explain it? It's almost as if his cape takes the shape as wings, because it doesn't look like they kind of pop out of his back like the other vampires. But two stone golems attack, like these stone construct things, and they start fighting them. And apparently they bleed, so I guess they're fleshy underneath, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Sypha's the one that kills these two giant monsters by impaling them with a giant freaking ice shard. So Gurgoth, that monster that we were talking about earlier, it unleashes some type of beam attack inside the courtyard. Sypha uses her magic to block the beam. And then Alucard teleports to, well, he uses that like fast teleport attack thing that he does.
Right.
And he punches the Gurgoth in the head. And Trevor ends up slicing the top of the head off of that thing. And after they take it out, they disperse to kind of help out the refugees get to safety. So of course, Alucard does a lot of cool shit during this fight, including turning into a flock of bats, and we already know he turns into a friggin' wolf and does all kinds of cool shit. Sypha flies around like a 15th century Iron Man.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? She like Because if you've seen the first Iron Man movie, Iron Man uses his hands to propel himself.
Yeah.
So that's what she does. She shoots like fire out of her hands, and she's kind of like flying around like Iron Man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Uh, and then we just see Trevor fighting night creatures close quarters using the cross dagger. We see, so they get split up, and Alucard gets in a fight with this crazy like Viking axe wielding vampire. And this is a cool fight because the vampire has sort of like the same powers that Alucard has, where he like teleports. But his teleportation, the way it works is he throws an axe and then he'll teleport to where the axe is or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So Alucard uses one of his tricks with a sword familiar, the one that we've seen before. So he tricks the Viking, and the Viking throws the axe like behind Alucard, and the Viking thinks he's about to kill Alucard, but the sword is behind the Viking, and the sword kills the Viking. So we also see Sypha. She's fighting a bunch of different vampires using close quarters techniques, which is interesting because usually Sypha fights at a distance, but we get to see here you doing like close quarters fighting with like magic. And then we see Trevor, and he's fighting. I wrote a spike demon planeswalker. I think I said that because there's like this demon that kind of teleports within shadows, and it like shoots out these spikes at him. He basically just destroys it by punching it in the face. Very simple. And during this, some vampires are transporting that Rebus thing in a procession. And that's where you see it has one boob. I put that in the notes.
Yeah.
At this point, Varney allows the Rebus to be brought in through the barrier. And Varney basically this whole time had been manipulating Saint Germain. He explains that he is that alchemist that appeared before him. I don't know if it was this season or last season, but this is when Saint Germain went into the Infinite Corridor, and he found like this woman who said that she was like some type of alchemist. And he gave,
right.
yeah. But what we do find out that Varney is actually Death. What do you think of the look of Death?
I think Death looks cool. That's awesome. Pretty
Yeah, it's
awesome
like a
demon.
skull, but it's like a skull, but it's like he's wearing a crown, but it's not really a crown. It's just like part of the skull.
Yeah, it's like a bone skull crown.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy looking. So Death tells Saint Germain that he needed
still
him
there?
because. Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Uh-oh. What happened?
Oh, I lost your audio for a minute. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying that Death explains to Saint Germain that only humans can reach into hell. So this is why Death had been manipulating him
Right.
in order to open this corridor.
Right.
Death explains that he feeds on murder.
Right.
And then he threatens Saint Germain. He threatens Saint Germain. I forget if he said that he wouldn't be able to reunite with his love or something So he opens the portal. The trio, Alucard, Sypha, and Trevor finish up with the stragglers, and then they regroup. Alucard informs Trevor about what Saint Germain was up to. And as they are going up to the location where Saint Germain is, they are stopped by some elite vampire lords. And they all have some unique powers. One of them seems to be a magician. One of them likes to shoot like needles everywhere. And the other one just like shoots bones or something. I don't know, it's really weird.
The magician one is cool. I thought that was cool, a vampire magician.
Yeah, they all had they had trouble with these vampires. So on their own, they were on close to being defeated. But what they did is they had to cross over and fight the other person's vampire. So they kind of used teamwork and trickery to take these vampire lords out, which was pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
they're not even the strong vampire lord. They do fight a stronger vampire lord right after that. It's actually
Right.
the vampire lord that Saint Germain was in league with directly, who had been insulting all the time.
Right.
But he ends up being pretty badass. He busts out like this staff that has multiple sections and they're connected by chains. And it's almost the weapon is very, very similar to the Morning Star.
Yeah, that's true.
And it gives Trevor a lot of trouble actually. So what happens is during the fight, Trevor actually scores a hit on the vampire's armor, shatters the armor off of the vampire's arm, but also the vampire's arm started blowing up because of the properties of the Morning Star. Like whenever it touches a monster, it will blow that monster up. I'm
Right.
actually watching like some of the scenes right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is a really cool fight scene. So
Yeah, I think this one might be my favorite fight scene of the season.
okay. So I'm actually looking back at the before the big vampire lord comes out when they're fighting those three vampires. What the vampire magician seems to like summon bones and stuff. It's pretty weird. She like one of them summons bones. One of the vampires has like strings and strings up and has wires and stuff and fights with a staff, like a double-bladed staff. Actually, there's two vampire magicians. So one of them like summons bones, and the other one uses like traditional magic. It looks like.
Okay.
But they and there's actually four. One of them. So there's the one with strings. There's the one that uses bones. There's one that's kind of like a ninja, wears like a cloak and throws like little knife dagger looking things.
Right.
And then there's the one that uses like straight up magic, like kind of like Sypha. But in order to fight those off, they have to fight their teammates' opponents to catch them off guard, and then they finally defeat all those minor vampire lords until the major one gets up, the badass one. Like right off the bat, Sypha shoots fire at him, but it seems like the fire doesn't really have any effect on this vampire lord at all. He just kind of shrugs it off like nothing's happening. Sypha tries to conduct electricity into the guy's weapon so he gets shocked, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And he's just fighting all of them, all three of them at the same time, and they're having a really rough go at it.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
like even Alucard's like teleporting and doing his attacks, and they're not doing a whole lot. They're doing a little bit of chip damage, but when the fight really starts to turn around is when Trevor breaks his armor and then hits his arm, and his arm starts to blow up. However, this vampire lord rips his arm off and throws it at Trevor like a boomerang,
Yeah.
and his arm blows up right in Trevor's face and knocks him out.
Yeah.
So at this point, Trevor's out, and we only have Sypha and Alucard that have to take him out. So after this vampire chucked his arm at Trevor, he sprouts wings and charges Sypha and Alucard. Sypha shoots a massive stream of flame. The flame doesn't affect him, but she uses it more as a distraction. So while he's can't really see through all this fire, Alucard charges him with his teleport technique and strikes him in the midsection with the sword. But for some reason, this vampire has extremely tough skin, so when he strikes him in the stomach, it's not penetrating. So in order to help, Sypha imbues herself with electricity, and she shoots like a lightning arrow at Alucard's sword, and this just gives it enough power to cut through this vampire, and he
that's
shears
cool.
the vampire in half.
That's cool teamwork fighting that they're doing that way.
Yeah, I think some of the best fighting is when they're all grouped together and they're using their powers to complement each other. Because I know what they tend to do is have them fight separately, and then when there's a really tough boss, put them together and do like their teamwork thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they finally vanquish this guy, and they find the chamber where Saint Germain and Death are in, and there's still a barrier up, and there's still a barrier up, so there's not a whole lot that they could do. So what happens is they actually witness Saint Germain bringing Dracula and Lisa's souls from hell and implanting them into this Rebus thing. And the Rebus thing just like goes mad. It's like has a split personality. It's speaking with Lisa's voice and with Dracula's voice, and it's just kind of going nuts.
It's
Trevor,
interesting. It's kind of like it's kind of like it's confused about which soul it should manifest as. Like, should it manifest as Dracula or Lisa is his dead wife's name?
yeah.
Like it's confused about whether it should be male or female, because we see that sort of premonition earlier on where we see when we see Saint Germain trying to open that portal, where we see Dracula and Lysa together in the other realm that he's opening the portal to.
Mm-hmm. So Trevor actually finally breaks through the barrier by striking it with the Morning Star. And at this point, Saint Germain actually has a change of heart, and he creates an opening for Trevor so that he can destroy the Rebus.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we might have talked about that before, because Saint Germain turns out to be the good guy and helping them in, I think, maybe the previous season or one of the seasons before, but I was still suspicious of him. But then he turns out to be basically evil in this season and working to try to resurrect Dracula. But then, like you said, he also changes his mind and does something good at the end too. So he's he's definitely like a very morally complex character. Like kind of all of them are in the series, I guess you could say, but it's more unexpected with him, I would say.
Yeah, I think death is probably the thing that was like, okay, I'm not dealing with this shit.
Yeah.
Basically, when he created the Rebus, like Saint Germain's like, oh my God, what have I done? He basically comes to a realization of what he did, and what he did is to help Trevor is he moved the portal over so that I think he placed it between Death and Rebus so that Death couldn't interfere. And then what happened was Trevor used the spinny dagger on the Rebus, and it just like blew up, and it created like this huge explosion and this magical like torrent of wind, where you see like pieces of Dracula's castle just kind of whooshing around. And when the spinny dagger hit the Rebus, the dagger itself blew up too.
Right.
So that's it.
That was
for the
cool
dagger.
too. Like it's like their two powers are reacting against each other and doing the same this thing that each of them intended simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's that big blast, and then Trevor falls to the ground, and we see Saint Germain. He's kind of slumped over. One of the points of the spinny dagger is in his chest, and we see like the infinite corridor portal closing, and as it's closing, we see like the silhouette of what we are to assume is this like lost love. Death gets extremely pissed off, and then he turns into a giant.
That's
He
the
gets
coolest part of the battle, when he turns into a giant.
yeah, he turns massive, and then Trevor is separated from Sypha and Alucard because they're like on a floating platform thing, and Sypha and Alucard are still like in the main part of the castle. So basically we can see like the pseudo goodbye speech where like Trevor professes his love for Sypha and tells her that Trey4 is a terrible name.
Yeah. That's been a running joke throughout this series, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he does the ISIS way, basically.
ISIS?
Yeah, he
ISIS?
does like a suicide death eventually, right? To try to kill
Yeah,
Death.
kind of. Like, so what happens is, well, they do have a little bit of dialogue, Death and Trevor.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor insists that death is a thing, but Death tells Trevor, I was put here at the dawn of life on Earth to feed on the last breath of every one of you fuckers.
Right.
I'm a little more than a thing. So we do get the epic battle, right? Freaking, a giant freaking Death, a tiny Belmont, and him and his Morning Star. They go at it. I know Death just kind of swats him a couple different times. Like, I think Death only hits him twice, but every time he gets hit, it's just like you're getting slapped by a giant hand.
Right.
And each time he gets slapped, is like it puts Trevor like on death's door.
Right.
But towards the end, Trevor gets like a second wind, and I guess he goes in the zone, so to speak. I don't know what you want to call it. But I think Death tries to use his scythe on Trevor, and he just kind of casually sidesteps it. And that's when he starts beating on him. Well, actually, he lights the Morning Star up with flame, so it becomes like a burning Morning Star. And he keeps like, I don't know, it's like it becomes a magical attack at that point, and he just like wails on Death with this flaming Morning Star. And we just see him getting bombarded with like fire attacks. And then he gets engulfed in fire eventually. And then Trevor abandons his Morning Star, and he has another dagger that he found inside the underground court, which is another like awesome like vampire hunting tool.
Mm-hmm.
So he runs and he jumps from floating stone to floating stone, like a extreme badass. And while Death is distracted by these flames that he's consumed in, Trevor charges at Death's head. Then we see like this dagger is like kind of messing Trevor up. His arm sleeves rip off, and it's like kind of burning his arm up. And we see a shot of Saint Germain. Apparently, he's still alive. And in the shot of Saint Germain, it shows his hand like wiggle, and it looks like he's trying to like perhaps pick up a key that was dropped. Then, as Trevor stabs Death directly in the forehead with that magical dagger, and then Death crumbles away, explodes, and it's like both of them get blown up or something.
Yeah, because it causes such a massive explosion that basically everyone assumes that Trevor's been killed in the explosion.
Yeah, it looks like they vanished. It's like, it's not like an explosion. It's like a weird vanishing thing. But that's how that episode ends, man.
Yeah. I was surprised that there was another episode after that. I thought, what? How does that not just the end of the series? Like, they killed Death, they solved the problem. What's gonna and the hero dies in the process, and then the next episode we see that it's a fake out death, and they're basically kind of tying up loose ends a lot too.
Yeah, so the last episode is like an epilogue.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And it's all epilogue-y, like dialogue stuff. So the last episode kind of ties up everybody's stories. First, it kind of tie up. I think this is probably my favorite part of the epilogue, when it ends Lenore and Hector's story.
Yeah.
So like they're in Styria, they're enjoying a cup of wine, and they talk about like vampire philosophy. And basically in this world, I guess vampires are conservatives, because they say that vampires are resistant to change.
Yeah.
And the vampire
Dracula's evil because he's the progressive vampire, right?
Yeah, he would be a progressive vampire because he's getting it on with the humans, taking on a human life, doing science and all that.
Yeah.
So Lenore explains the vampire virtue, which is remain the same and remain stable.
Right.
And this is something funny that Hector says. He describes it as philosophical acrobatics, which I guess is the same as like mental gymnastics or something.
Right.
So they talk about, Lenore talks about the difference between strength and power.
Right.
And she says that vampires are to seek strength. And what Carmilla wanted was power. She says strength, she basically sums it up as a strength gives you the power to adapt to situations. So power meaning you can protect yourself, or strength to protect yourself. And when she describes the power that Carmilla wanted, she says that power does nothing but eat. And Hector's like a vampire?
Yeah.
So Lenore, she mentions that she no longer wants to be caged. And of course, Hector doesn't want her to go on this path, but she commits vampiricide by sunrise.
Yep.
And it's kind of like this thing where the sun's coming up and she's like, oh, this is like nothing. And then she like turns into dust.
This is what you humans love so much.
Yeah. And then she just kind of turns into some dust.
That's interesting too, because sunrises are beautiful, but I only look at them and appreciate their beauty when I happen to be up anyway. I never deliberately get up to watch the sunrise. I don't think very many people do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then sunrises, they're only nice when they're not polluted by urban sprawl. So
Yeah,
like if
for
you're in the
sure.
middle of the city, a sunrise just doesn't look as nice as if you're like in the woods or at a beach or some type of natural environment.
Right.
As I know sunsets, like if you're on the East Coast, sunrises, that means sunrises on the ocean. On the West Coast, the sun sets on the ocean. Well, when I lived in California, I basically lived very close to the ocean, so I always see like amazing sunsets there. I haven't had the experience of seeing an amazing sunrise. It's just those are harder to experience because you got to get up early as fuck.
I've seen them before because my sleep my sleep patterns are all over the place, so I sometimes happen to be up when the sun rises.
All right. So, Dracula Castletown. I don't know what you want to call it. I guess we call it Belmont. Is that what they settle on?
Yeah, I guess so. I think that's what they call it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is when they think he's dead and he's sacrificed himself.
Yeah, so the villagers are just basically rebuilding. We see a bunch of scholars going through the Belmont archive, learning about wonders of the world. And Alucard and Greta have a conversation.
Right.
She notices that the orphans have been calling Alucard father.
Right.
And I kind of see that they're kind of developing some type of relationship here. I don't know if it might be romantic or not, possibly.
Kind of seems like it might be that way.
Yeah. I think they debate over who came up with the plan, but they don't even tell us what that plan is. Like,
Right.
oh, I came up with the plan. No, it was me. I came up. It's kind of the banter you would see, like flirtatious-ish banter.
Right.
But while they're talking, Sypha emerges from the castle looking super depressed. And she had been, I guess, not talking to anybody for 2 weeks or something like that.
Right.
Been hidden away. So they finally talk to Sypha, and Sypha plans to rejoin her caravan of, what are they called? Seekers, or
Yeah, I think the Seekers, right?
yeah, I forgot the name of her clan, but I like this kind of nomadic sect of monks.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, I forgot what they're called. I don't think it's Seekers. I think it's something else.
Yeah, I think it's something that sounds like that.
I think it sounds more academic, though.
Speakers.
Speakers, very close. Very close.
Yeah.
Also, she explains to Greta and Alucard that she's definitely Prego. And Alucard is trying to convince her to stay. And he actually does successfully do that, because we see her drop her bags that she was going to use to travel. She asks what they are going to call the new town, and they're going to call it Belmont, and Sypha stays. Alucard mentions that he sees a familiar horse approaching, but he doesn't know who the rider cloaked upon the horse is. So the rider, is actually Trevor, and of course they're shocked. Trevor explains that Saint Germain saved him using the Infinite Corridor. So that's kind of what that deal was, when they kind of showed a shot of Saint Germain just like wiggling his fingers. I guess he was doing something there.
Right.
So Trevor explained that he knew that Sypha was pregnant, and he made some implication that he has a lot of bastards. Because he says that she's like, "Oh, how'd you know I was pregnant?" And he's like, "Well, there's a reason that I'm all on the road and single all the time." Like, holy crap. Because that means he's just like bangs women and bails when he finds out that they're pregnant. She gets super pissed off.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. That's fun. That's funny.
She gets super pissed, and she shoves him on the ground. It's kind of messed up, because he's visibly like fucked up. And basically she says, "You're a rude idiot, but I love you." And then she runs to like a group of villagers to see if they can help him.
Right.
And we see that they explain that his damage is not from the fight, so to speak. It's from using the dagger. But the dagger has a physical toll when you use it.
Right.
So the villagers are attending Belmont. We see Alucard actually says that he's happy, which is pretty cool, because he's been depressed like the entire show, pretty much. And Sypha ends by saying, "We finally won." And here's kind of a twist ending here. We show some town, and two cloaked figures enter an inn, and it happens to be Dracula and his wife Lisa. They go and rent a room. I have no idea how they're alive, but they say that, I think they explain.
Didn't Saint Germain resurrect them?
Yeah, but remember, they went to Rebus, and Trevor blew that Rebus up with the spinny dagger.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I guess I just figured they happened as some side effect or something. That's a good point. They didn't really explain that.
Yeah, so what happened? Well, we only get an explanation from a recollection of what they said happened, but the only thing that they said that they remember was waking up in the field
Right.
and naked, and they had to go and steal clothes from like a local farmer.
Right.
So they're like laying in bed, and they're saying, hey, we can't visit Alucard right now because it would just be too shocking. And they say, well, in the meantime, let's go travel the world, and then maybe one day later we can see our son again. That's
Right.
how it ends. It ends with them too.
Yeah, it's interesting that it focuses on that relationship. And even though I kind of think the show would have been even better if it had ended on episode 9, because that's such an epic ending. I still like the fact that Trevor and Sypha end up reunited, because their relationship does become kind of a major part of it, and they're working together but also romantically involved throughout most of the series.
Well, I understand why they did it, because their son is basically a protagonist for the first Castlevania game. Their son is the protagonist, so Castlevania 3 is a prequel.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
linearly, they start at Castlevania 3 because Castlevania 3 takes place before Castlevania 1 and 2.
Oh, okay.
So they basically are giving birth to the protagonist to the next Castlevania game.
Okay.
So they kind of had to throw that in there. I knew, well, I didn't know if Trevor was going to be alive or not, but I knew that she was going to have some type of baby.
Right.
According to the Castlevania lore.
Okay.
But I didn't mind the epilogue. I thought it was cool that they tried to wrap up some of these story things.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I wish there was some Isaac in it. There was kind of no Isaac there. So
Yeah, that's true.
I kind of wanted to know what happened to him and what he was planning to do.
Yeah.
Or maybe he might pop up in a future Castlevania. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But that is the end. So what did you think of this season versus the other season?
I think it's pretty cool, man. There were lots of epic battles for sure, and I like where it went with the characters and the directions it went with the plot. And Death was a pretty awesome surprise villain, and yeah, I guess I like all the awesome battles the most. I still think maybe my favorite season is season 2 when they kill Dracula, because there's, like, in terms of vampires, there's just something about vampire or Dracula that it's hard to top him as a villain, even with Death.
Yeah, and I liked the fight. One of the things I loved about that Dracula fight is that it took so many elements from the actual game and threw them in there. Like, a lot of the attacks that Dracula did were based off of his character from the game.
Oh, okay. Cool.
One thing I forgot to say something. Death. Yes, Death is a game boss from the Castlevania series.
Oh, okay, cool.
However, Death is never the last boss.
Oh, okay.
He's always the penultimate boss. So you always fight him before Dracula. That's why I thought it was a little strange that he was the last boss in the series.
Oh, okay.
But I kind of get that. Like, Death is pretty scary. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
When you fight him in a game, he's not gigantic like that, but he will take different forms.
Right.
But yeah, that's something I forgot to note, that Death serves Dracula. He is not above Dracula. And I think they do mention in the show that um, that death was in Dracula's court.
Oh, okay.
But
I
he
didn't
was
remember that.
disguised as Varney.
Right.
But the reason Death wanted Dracula to succeed is because he was going to bring a lot of death and destruction, and
Right.
he was going to feed on that. And Death cannot directly cause death and destruction. Others have to do it for him.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned earlier that's why he was doing all that manipulation.
Right, to get Dracula back, because he wanted Dracula to put his plan back in place. I don't
Right.
even think he would. Like, if he was brought back with his wife, I wouldn't think that he would have the same plan. Maybe he'd be still pissed off about what happened, but who knows?
Yeah.
But that is canon, though, to the the Castlevania series. His wife does get killed in the game
Okay.
by
Does
Zealot.
she get
She gets burnt at the
resurrected?
stake. No, she doesn't get resurrected.
Okay.
Dracula does. I don't believe his wife does. I can't remember any game where the wife comes back.
Okay.
She's mentioned, but she's never resurrected. But you liked season 2. Yeah, I would say the same. I thought season 2 was better. This is just behind season 2 for me. For me, it'd be one. It's going to be 2, 4, 1, 3.
I think I would have the exact same ranking. Yeah. I was just
Yeah,
thinking
2, 4, 1, 3.
Yeah.
I think season 2 just kind of expressed the game in its purest form. And like I said, Dracula, to me, Dracula is the supreme last boss. So to me, it's like, oh, they killed the last boss in the second season. Like, what are they going to do after that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Death is pretty cool, but even in the games, he's not the last boss.
Right.
But yeah, I still enjoyed season 4. Still good stuff.
Yeah, it's great. Well, like we both agree, I think it's our second favorite season.
Right. And yeah, it's all of the seasons are good. It's just it doesn't top 2. 2 just has, I don't know, twists and turns. As the Viking vampire who gets killed, the introduction of Hector and Isaac, the destruction of Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
So much good stuff.
For sure.
But I'm not saying this one is bad. It's hard to top that second season.
It is. It is.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Glad that you enjoyed your time with Castlevania. Apparently, they're working on a new series.
Oh yeah, I heard.
No
I think I
idea.
heard that.
Yeah, I have no idea which Belmont they're going to cover. My guess is going to be Simon, maybe. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. But I don't know what they're going to do, because Castlevania 3 works well, because Castlevania 3 actually has 4 protagonists. They cut one of those protagonists out and focus on 3. But Castlevania 1 only has the one protagonist. So I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to introduce some new characters. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 thumbs up for me, man. 5 stars.
Yeah, me too. Me too, for sure.
So now that we're done with the Castlevanias, what do you read anything interesting this week?
Yeah, so I relatively recently I've been trying to learn more about Kant because he's such a famous philosopher, but I dove in way too deeply too quickly by reading his Critique of Pure Reason, which is like it's the ultimate level of Kant. So, but a long time ago, Tim Keefe, who I did philosophy episodes with a lot, he sent me a whole bunch of philosophy ebooks, and he sent me so many that I never got around to most of them. So I started reading more of those, and I saw, he has some of the ones are Cambridge companions to different philosophers or philosophies that we've done video series on a few of before, like postmodern theology. So I read the Cambridge companion to Kant, which was very interesting and educational and helped me understand some of what the fuck Kant was talking about a lot more, because his writing is extremely dense. It's simple, but it's extremely dense, and he's set up such a complex philosophical system, and that book helped me understand what his positions actually are and what the points are that he's getting at. So that was a good educational book.
Mm. That's some good old philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I love philosophy.
I've been,
I also sorry, go ahead.
I've been trying. I'm trying to get a hold of Das Kapital.
Is that Marx?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like some foundational, like Marx texts.
I don't know I think that might be the same. Capital, or maybe it's different. Capital Volume 1 is.
Yeah, that's it. Capital Volume 1.
Yeah, I've read that too. It's way more boring than the Communist Manifesto, but it's also a hell of a lot more detailed. Like, especially there are parts where he goes into the comparing the prices of different goods. Like, it's a really much more strictly economic book, and that's why it's such a seminal work in terms of Marx, because he was much more about economics than politics specifically.
Right. Yeah, it's an economic theory for the most part. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was wanting to get into that. I'm trying to get those books from my library. There are no audiobooks. It's only in print form, so I gotta actually read it.
Right.
So yeah, were there any other books you're checking out?
Yeah, I'm also reading Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Okay, so, what's that
obviously
about?
it's kind of like a parody take of Pride and Prejudice. I want to read all of these eventually. They're kind of parody versions of Jane Austen books. They kind of add some cool fantasy stuff to make it more appealing, to make these classics more appealing to people, I think. So this one is basically the story of Pride and Prejudice, but it's during Victorian era England, but also there's a zombie apocalypse and people have to fight zombies while also caring so much about class distinction and being all proper and marrying each other to good families and that kind of stuff. So it's good. I like it.
You read The Phenomenology of Spirit?
Yeah, I've read that and listened to an audiobook and watched video series about Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, and he's so notoriously complex and abstract that I still don't understand it that well, but I understand it more and more each time I read it. And I've got to read some more companion works of it and analyses of it. I bet there's a Cambridge companion to Hegel, and probably each one of his specific works, like Phenomenology of Spirit. So yeah, he's definitely got a lot of interesting ideas about metaphysics and spirit, obviously, and religion and aesthetics and all sorts of other interesting philosophical concepts like that.
Okay.
I also
You
finished.
gave something 5 stars here. The Night Eternal.
Yeah, that's the one I was about to mention. Yeah, I finished my reread of the Strain trilogy, co-created by Guillermo del Toro, which is an awesome vampire series about. It's a bit of a scientific take on vampires, a more scientific look at vampires specifically, and it's basically about a zombie outbreak virus that becomes a zombie apocalypse, and and it starts in New York City, and it involves all sorts of interesting characters. And this time in my reread of it, I've been watching the show at the same time as I've been reading the books, which is really cool. So yeah, that's a really awesome vampire series. I actually haven't read that many vampire books, even though I love vampires and they're my favorite fantasy horror creature. But that's what I've been wanting to get to for a while. Maybe sometime this year I'll read a lot of those Anne Rice books, because I've read a few of hers in her newer Vampire Chronicles series, but I've never read her original Vampire Chronicles, and I've read Dracula, but I haven't really read anything about vampires other than that Strain series and those few Anne Rice books and Dracula. But yeah, it's a really awesome series. I highly recommend both that and the show. And the show, for the most part, sticks pretty closely to the book, especially earlier on in this, or books, I should say, especially earlier on in the series.
Okay. I noticed that you gave the Elder Gods 2 stars.
Yeah, that was that David Eddings book I was telling you that I was reading. I know you mentioned the what's his main series, the Belgariad. Yeah. I know you mentioned that was a good one, and I'm pretty sure I have the first 4 books in that series, so I intend to read that one. But this one, if the Belgariad is better, this one is definitely way worse. It's some of the worst fantasy I've ever read. It was
really, it's that bad.
Yeah, it's better than Terry Goodkind, but it was so the dialogue was super cheesy. The magic, I didn't really see the appeal of it. Some of it was weird. The characters didn't really seem that redeeming to me. There was little to no character development. And I think the last time we talked, I mentioned one of the weird things where it's that the world is controlled by gods, and this group of gods is slowly giving way to the newer gods, and the gods cannot kill people, even though they're so powerful that they can change the weather and other things like that. But it's only kids, who are called the Dreamers, who have godlike powers but are allowed the ability to kill. And this one god is raising one of the Dreamers, and this weird thing that I think I mentioned to you last time we talked is that it learns to speak the dolphin language and goes swimming with these pink dolphins who are for some reason in there, and that just happens at the start of the book, and then they don't even come back to the pink dolphins throughout the rest of the book. It was I really didn't like that book.
I have to check it out, because I wonder how different it is from the other books. Like the Belgariad is kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It's definitely not grimdark. It's very tropey, but I don't know. I just kind of like it, even though it's super tropey. I just like the old wizard, and the Belgariad is like one of my favorite old wizards. Like the old wizard trope of that book. Like I like him better than Zed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll I'll definitely read the Belgariad at some point. Maybe it's way better
Don't
than
read it.
Elder.
I'm gonna get you the. I think I enjoyed the audiobooks because the guy that does the narration is just good.
Okay, sure,
So
cool.
I'm not, because sometimes if I read a book, I don't know what it is. If a narrator is very good at narrating, sometimes a mediocre book gets elevated a little bit. So I don't
Right.
even know if that might be the case for that, but who knows, man.
Sure. Yeah, it really varies depending on the books. Like sometimes for me it seems like there's a difference between fiction and nonfiction, but sometimes that's not always consistent. Like sometimes I think sometimes it seems like fiction is better for audiobooks and vice versa, and sometimes it seems like nonfiction is better for audiobooks and vice versa. It kind of depends on the specific book, I guess, because there can be
Yeah,
obviously there are lots of different fiction writing styles and lots of different ways of writing nonfiction books too.
yeah, because I think the Dreamers is like the third. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like the fifth series he wrote.
Okay. Maybe he was better earlier on.
I don't know. I like the early stuff. Well, the first book he wrote was in 1982,
Okay.
so it's not terribly modern. Um, because when I read that, I was also listening to like the Legendarium episodes, and they love this book or the series at least. I
Okay.
liked it as much as they do. Eventually, I
Cool.
do want to get hardback collection of this series.
Cool.
'Cause I liked it that much.
Cool.
But I'll have to see about this Elder God stuff. But from what I understand, the Elder Gods was co-written with his wife.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that in the book, in the start or the end of the book.
Yeah, because I know the first books were just him. But I gotta check
Okay.
out his standalones that are related to the Belgariad, because those are also written with his wife. So I don't know, maybe because I
Okay.
have a couple of those.
Oh, okay. Oh, are those the ones I saw, where they show the other books that an author has written in the book before you started? Were those the ones that I saw that were not in with the books in other series?
Well,
Probably.
there's the Belgariad, and then there's the Malorian. But
Okay.
basically, the Belgariad and the Malorian are, to be frank, it's really just one series, but
Okay.
it's split in two because there's the Malorian is weird. It's kind of like an entire rehashing of the first series. I like them both, but the Malorian is kind of derivative of the first series he wrote.
Okay.
It's the same characters and everything, though, but it almost ends almost exactly the same way. It's just weird.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I also heard that the Millennium series is like thematically identical to the Bulgaria.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is weird because he started writing that series during the end of the Malorian.
Okay.
I'll see. I'll read it eventually. It's just like my library doesn't really. None of my libraries have Millennium. I think they might have the Dreamers, so.
Okay.
But cool, man. Sorry to that you got a bad taste of some Eddings there. You thought it was not that good.
Yeah, that's okay. It doesn't ruin him as an author for me. If you like the Belgariad, I'll definitely give those a try.
Just hope it's not too boring for you.
Yeah,
It's like
well,
super tropey. Like you're not going to be surprised by a lot of the characters.
I'm not necessarily bothered by tropes if they're done in an interesting way.
Yeah, I just like the dialogue in the Belgariad. Like my favorite character in the Belgariad is Silk.
Okay.
He's basically like the thief spy master trope character. He's a slick character. But
Okay.
yeah, I can't see what else did you read. I guess that was what you read. That was the most recent.
Yeah, I
'Cause I only read a couple things.
Can't really remember how much else that I've read recently.
All right. Well, I guess I'll say what I've read. I finished Area 51.
Cool.
I enjoyed that book.
Yeah, it's a good book.
It was mostly, I was like, wow, this is a lot to do with us spying on other countries. That's basically, it was basically about spy planes.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you're rereading The Similarian? Did you reread it?
Oh, I'm actually well, I just put that on Goodreads because I'm just watching the 10 episode series that the Legendarium is doing. They're doing a kind of deep dive series into basically the themes and concepts and particular short stories in the Silmarillion. So I'm counting that as a reread.
I'll have to check that out. As I am not, the Silmarillion is really tough.
It is for sure.
Yeah, it's not like linguistically difficult to understand. It's just, man,
it's basically like a fake history book.
Yeah, that's kind of why it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So Area 51, that was a great book. I think it was written in 2011.
Okay.
So I was like, man, there's so much interesting stuff, and that had to do with like the spy technology and Roswell and trying to tie all those different types of things together. But
yeah,
she mainly stuck to like.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. She was like mainly sticking to like the Scully version of events versus like the Mulder versions of events.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah, that's my favorite one of her books because there's so many like alien conspiracy theories about Area 51, of course, and it's so interesting just to know what actually happened there, basically.
It's crazy because one of the most shocking and revealing things that's uncovered close to the end of the book is that the Russians were genetically experimenting on kids with Dr. Mengele, and he sent them over to fool Americans and thinking that aliens exist.
Oh, I forgot about that part. Yeah, for sure.
And then one of the people that Annie Jacobson, I guess, was interviewing, who had worked in the government, had said, you know what, we've done the same or worse.
Right.
So there's an implication that what Bob Lazar saw was us doing secret experiments on people.
Basically, yeah.
Did you ever read that book, War Against All Puerto Ricans?
Yeah, I read it when you sent it to me.
Yeah, that kind of confirms a couple things for me too, because in that book, they were doing radiological experiments on prisoners there.
Right.
You remember that part of the book?
I don't remember that very well, no.
Yeah, there's a part of the book where they're talking about this person's prison experience, and they believe that they were feeding him radioactive materials.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're doing some type of experiments on him to see how they would affect him. But I was like, man, that kind of confirms that, hey, the government will do some shady shit with prisoners and stuff like that.
Yeah, no shit, man.
I was like, oh, okay, this is nuts. Yeah, that was a really entertaining book. Another one I finished was Siege,
What's
which is
that?
the second Michael Wolff book in the Trump trilogy.
Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure I read that then. I think I've read all of his books about Trump.
Yeah, it seems like most of his books are like about Steve Bannon and Trump.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think Michael Wolff gets a lot of his info from Steve Bannon.
Right.
I don't get it, man. Trump is just. I don't get how people can't see that Trump is just like a 70-year-old toddler. Like
He really is. He really is.
is.
Like that's the most legitimate criticism of Trump that you can have, really. Like he didn't even fulfill his promises that he made to his fans, that he was going to do all this.
No wall.
He was going to do
like,
all
Ann
this stuff.
Coulter got pissed at
Yeah.
him. Like everybody got pissed at him because he shut the wall, but the government shutdown did even worse for his image.
Yeah. Yep.
And the wall's stupid anyway. It's a fucking idiotic idea.
Yeah.
It's a waste of money. But yeah, I thought it was okay. I think I gave it 3 stars.
I think I probably did too.
Like it was informative to some respect. And then I think the last one is called Landslide, which I might do that within a month or so. And now I just finished All of the Dead, I think it's called. Which is a John Le Carre book.
Oh, that's why it sounds familiar.
I think I'm gonna get into some of his stuff again. I remember,
yeah, I want to read some more of his too. I've only read like maybe 2 in that original George Smiley series.
Yeah, no, I've only read the one, which is book 3, and I don't know why I started there. I just kind of read it. Which is, I think I forgot what it's called. It's called The Spy In From the Cold or something like that.
Yeah, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the first one. And I thought that was an excellent book. This one is okay. I actually like the other one better. But this one was pretty good. It's kind of like the introduction of the George Smiley character. So
Yeah.
you get like his backstory and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna go and get into the next one too. I'm pretty sure that'll be pretty good. And then I actually just finished also The Scrivener's Bones.
What's that
which
one?
is one of Brandon Sanderson's Alcatraz books.
Oh, that's why that sounds familiar. Right.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for that other book to come in so I could send it to you.
Book 4?
That one was pretty good. I like these little Alcatraz books. Like they're
they're pretty good
reading.
They're pretty good for YA. Yeah.
Yeah, very light. Very, very YA. I would say this is like in the primary school level of YA.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more children's than YA.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that too. Like, there's some YA, like Golden Compass, or especially like what Harry Potter becomes. That's pretty, like, definitely darker. Like more like, I don't know, teen rather than children's YA, maybe.
Yeah. Well, there is like blood and stuff in this, so it's not like it's probably like a sixth, fifth grade can start off with these books.
Yeah.
Because they got some literary jokes that young kids just wouldn't understand.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's a lot of breaking of the fourth wall in these books.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
And also, lastly, Oberon, one of the short stories coming out of the
Expanse.
Expanse. I had not realized, like, I actually listened to the book twice. It's very short, but I listened to it twice. The reason I listened to it twice is after the first time I read it, I was like, huh, okay. Like, what is the relevance of this story to like the overall like expanse? And I was looking into it. I was like, oh shit, the old man is Eric. I didn't even realize that. The old
Oh
man with the
yeah.
fake arm. So I was like, okay, now that I know that the old man is with the fake arm is Eric from book 3, and then book 5, I think. I'll listen to it again. And I listened to it a second time. I was like, yeah, this is like pretty good.
Yeah. I
Pretty
like all
good,
those
snappy short story.
I like all those novellas and short stories in the Expanse universe.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna do the Butcher from Anderson Station.
That's a
Right
good one.
now, I think I had put on Winter's Heart. So I'm probably gonna listen to that up to chapter 10 and then check out some more Expanse short stories for sure.
So did you want to next week you said we could start talking about Winter's Heart with Tristram, right? So should I read the first 10 chapters of it then?
Yeah, I would suggest reading the first 10 chapters, because we'll talk about it this weekend, next
Okay.
weekend. The prologue and this one is another one of those giant prologues. But then again, a lot of the chapters, it seems like the chapters in this book are longer. Because I remember on average, like most Jordan chapters would be like 30 minutes. And a lot of these chapters are like an hour to an hour and a half long.
Right.
So I don't know why his chapters are getting so big and chunky now. That's probably why there's less chapters, because the chapters are just so much longer now.
Right. Yeah, I bet you're right.
All right. So I think that'll be it for today. Next week, we'll talk about Winter's Heart, getting back into our read of The Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And what plugs do you have for us, Sam?
Yeah, people that want can check out my YouTube channel, Mindgasms, where Dusty and Parker and I, who joins us for book chats a lot, we talked about The Drawing of the Three, book 2 of Stephen King's horror fantasy western series, which builds his Ka interconnected universe, which is cool. And so check that out. And yeah, next week we're gonna do the movie chat on the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's 4-hour long recut of Justice League, which a lot of nerds like because it's way better than the shitty theatrical version that got mangled because Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide halfway through. So Joss Whedon, who directed the Avengers movie, directed half of the movie, and it had 2 completely different feels for it. So we're going to check that out. And also I'm working on my video for Rule 3 of Jordan Peterson's new book called Beyond Order, because 12 rules aren't enough, so he needs 12 more at least. So check that out as well. And that's all my stuff.
All right, man. And yeah, that's some solid stuff. Check out his channel, like and subscribe to stuff. I think before we end it for tonight, I was just watching a bunch of James Lindsay critiques recently.
He's so
He's just getting
ridiculous.
really annoying, man.
I saw that you saw my my tweet criticizing his video on Michaela Peterson's channel, where he and Vosh give their opposing views on critical race theory, and my criticism of his newest appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's such like an insane cherry picker who constructs this insane bullshit narrative of like, look, this thing over here connects to this thing over here and this thing over here, and it means the global elites are trying to engineer the Great Reset and make a fascist communist China in America, bro.
It's like the common strategy on the right seems to be, let's do everything in our power to connect this thing that we don't like to Marxism.
Yeah, basically.
Like, okay. It's just boring. It's like, it's as boring as the people that were trying to connect everything to fascism. It's just, why don't you just...
Yeah.
But what do you think of Vosh's description of it? I thought it was
I thought his everything he said made total sense to me. Like, I think he gave a really good defense of it.
Yeah, like he even talked crap about overzealous, like Robin DiAngelo types.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
And he said one thing that I got from you that you say a lot too, which is it's not a monolith. They disagree with each other about things.
Yeah, he pointed that out. That the criminal race theorists all agree about stuff, and they're all squabbling over everything.
Yeah,
I think he said that two of them don't even like each other at all.
Yeah, the right wing thing to connect everything you don't like to Marxism, and I would say also wokeness, is just like the uber left wing thing of trying to call everything you don't like fascist.
Right. It's the same. It's like conspiratorial thinking. It's not engaging the material itself. It's creating this ultimate bad and trying to connect the thing to the ultimate bad instead of going into the thing itself and criticizing why that particular thing may be bad. Yeah. And usually, like, whenever James Lindsay describes something, they're like conspiratorial inferences. They're not even like direct things that the material is talking about.
No, and he's always doing all this mind reading too. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing all this mind reading about their intentions. Yeah, he does.
It's like, have I read the same shit that you're reading? Like, where's all this fucking... It's like, oh, we're teaching your kids to be blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, not really. Like maybe... yeah, it's just dumb. It's all this, like... Farley from Everything Sunny in Philadelphia level, like conspiracy. It's just conspiracy bullshit. Like, I tried to listen to the Rogan thing, like right off the bat, they're talking about crazy conspiracy shit. And as soon as he started talking about like the local schools in my area, I was like, this guy's full of shit. I'm just gonna turn that shit off.
I just listen to I force myself to listen to them sometimes to see, just so I'm not endlessly criticizing people without actually interrogating what they say.
Yeah, but it's hard, man. It's like it's very difficult for me to listen to people make conspiratorial inferences about shit. It's just
Well, especially for you, because you used to be a hardcore conspiracy theorist, so now you're like super good at detecting that shit.
Yeah, it's like right off the bat, I can tell if they're making conspiratorial inferences about things. It's like you know, that Dr. Maloney had on, like, fuck,
Yeah.
against
Yeah,
conspiratorial
he was like
guy.
right after James Lindsay. I was like, I looked at the description before I watched it, and I was like, the last part of it was like the integrity of elections. Oh, is he a Trump election fraud guy? And I had that in my
He's
head the whole time.
basically, look, he's gobbled up all of the right wing talking points.
Yeah,
So
he has.
he's the vaccine, the election. He's basically riding that grift on the right so he can stay afloat in whatever he does.
And he kept saying I'm left leaning throughout the whole
No, he's
episode.
not fucking that. He wanted Trump. I think he voted for Trump so that he would ban critical race theory. If I'm not mistaken.
Like James
The guy's
Lindsay.
full of
Yeah, he
shit.
did that. James Lindsay did that. It did that thing in that Rogan episode too that he does, where he said he was advocating for free speech for Trump election fraud, but like you said, he wants to ban CRT. He wants freedom of speech for the most crazy right wing shit, but the more left wing shit, he's like, that's evil and it's going to lead to fascism and communism.
He wants to ban something that's not even being taught.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then whatever vagary they think is being taught, how do you ban vagaries?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's
they
why
don't even have the legal language available to them to actually ban.
That's why it just
becomes.
Yes,
we're going to ban divisive speech about race. I was like,
yeah.
what the fuck does that mean?
That's why they become the snowflakes that they criticize. So it becomes anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, you can't teach it to my kids.
Yeah, it's getting stupid, man. Like this one lady at a school board meeting over here, because our governor has made some type of executive order to lift the mask mandate at schools. It turns out that the governor doesn't actually have that power. So my local schools are still mandating masks. And there's like some lady at a local school board meeting who's like, I'm taking my kid to school without a mask. And if you don't let him in, I'm coming to the school with guns loaded. That's how fucking
Oh
crazy
yeah, you
these
mentioned
people
that
are.
yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's fucked up.
So, what I want to listen to though is the Josh Zepps episode. I never got around to listening to that.
That was a good one. Yeah, I didn't listen to it at first, but then I went back and listened to it.
I completely forgot about Josh Zepps because I used to listen to his podcast.
Oh, okay. I never really did. I've seen him on previous episodes of Rogan show though, and I forgot who he was too, so that's why I didn't watch the newest episode at first. But then I went and listened to it when I saw that a whole bunch of people were making videos about that clip where he was correcting Joe Rogan about what was it, the thing with
myocarditis?
Yeah, myocarditis in children from vaccines, and he was pointing out that children are like way 8 to 10 times more likely or something like that. Don't quote me, but a hell of a lot more likely to get myocarditis from COVID than from the vaccine.
Right. That's about 8 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they busted that thing that Joe Rogan. It's just, I don't know who the hell Joe's listening to, but he's been peddling a lot of bullshit lately, man.
People like those doctors that Brett Weinstein have on, who are like these rebel doctors who have the real truth about the vaccines and COVID.
Yeah, sure. But I already know that Brett Weinstein is subject to conspiracy theories. I stopped listening to him after he made like this BLM episode that was about, he was saying that, the Black Lives Matter, they want to abolish them. I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? So I went to like the evidence that he was using. I was like, the evidence that they want to abolish STEM is because BLM asks people in STEM fields to walk out on their jobs for a day
Right.
in support of George Floyd. And it's like, how does he come to the conclusion that Black Lives Matter wants to abolish STEM because they asked people in STEM fields to walk out of their jobs for a day? That just makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, it's
like
pretty crazy. And he was saying like the whole Black Lives Matter organization are Maoists because they were founded by Maoist lesbians, or all that type of shit.
Yeah, BLM is not like a centralized organization.
Yeah.
They don't take their marching orders from like a president. There is no president of BLM.
Right.
Like, there's a bunch of local chapters, but there's no central authority. It's kind of like the same thing at Gamergate was. There was no central authority or boss of Gamergate. There was just
Right.
like a bunch of groups of people that had their own ideas about how to approach it. So that's so dumb.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't know. I just think if your main livelihood becomes speaking, it almost seems like you become more susceptible to the grift when most of your money relies on public speaking.
I think it depends on what you're talking about too. That's one of the reasons why if I achieve my goal of getting 1,000 subscribers and monetizing my channel, so I can at least make a little bit money from my YouTube channel, and I perhaps grow bigger than that, I want that's part of, well, other than just interest, for sure, that's the biggest reason. That's one of the reasons why I want to keep forever talking about like awesome movies and fantasy and science fiction books a whole lot, and not like get into only talking about politics all the time, because it's just like that sort of like political topics or divisive or controversial things that make people just that like it incentivizes people when they're making money, like you say, to just go hardcore, extreme, oversimplified arguments, because that's what people are attracted to, and that's what can make you more money.
Right. I don't know, man. It's just sad that a lot of these personalities that I really liked are like are like hardcore grifting.
Like all of the IDW people, basically.
Well, not all of them. I don't think
most of them.
Harris is grifting.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think Eric Weinstein is either. Yeah.
I don't technically think Joe is grifting.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't think I don't think Joe is grifting. He's susceptible to conspiratorial thinking, because people who've watched his podcast for a long time know that he used to be like way into aliens and stuff, and he's really into that stuff. And even if he doesn't believe in it as much as he used to, but he's very susceptible to that and very susceptible to conspiracy theories. And he used to believe that the moon landing was faked, and he's kind of susceptible to conspiratorial thinking with all the COVID stuff, I would say.
Yeah, well, I'm glad there are still some people out there that are not susceptible to the grift. Like, I've seen even some left-ish people who have kind of been susceptible to the grift.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, are you familiar with H3 Productions?
I'm familiar with them. Yeah, I haven't really followed them that much. Only just like the controversy stuff that people make videos about, like that whole thing with Sam Cedar potentially debating Steven Crowder. And I saw that similar thing recently where he was criticizing Joe Rogan's anti-vaccine stance, and people were criticizing, and Jimmy Dore was criticizing him for that because he's fat.
Okay. Was that why they was criticizing? Because he's fat?
Yeah, and the H3 guy was criticizing him because he's criticizing Joe Rogan because he's supposedly not actually healthy because he eats meat and eggs and he doesn't take vaccines or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think Ethan is getting a bit too ideological. He's starting to get there.
Yeah.
Like, I think one of his is he does like a joint podcast now with Hassan Piker.
Oh yeah,
I
Hassan
don't really
Piker.
like-
Hassan Piker is way too lefty. He gets kind of griftery too, I would say.
Yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, I still think Kyle is still pretty damn genuine.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, he is probably, I don't know. Like, when I say grifty, it's just like they start getting too woke, I think.
Yeah.
They fall into that woke trap.
I also I follow Sam Cedar's show, The Majority Report, and they they're definitely like as uber left woke grifty as you can get. Like they criticize some of the same people we criticize, but they go all out, like, you know, James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin and all of these people. They're like racist, white supremacists, or all that kind of shit.
Well, I've been watching some content. I think Crowder is pretty much a racist now.
Yeah, he's as far right wing as someone like Hassan Piker or Sam Cedar is left wing.
Yeah, I don't know. Crowder, I don't think you can do a caricature of a white person or a black person as a white person and get away with it.
Yeah, you saw that I think it was like Kyle Kalinske and a few other people made videos recently about him talking about MLK.
Yeah, it's like, and then fucking Dora just went down the toilet for me. It's like all he talks about is anti-vax shit all the time.
Yeah, that's all he does now.
It's like the anti-vax grift. I think once he started feuding with Jank is when he started getting grifty.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's true. And then there's all this stuff like throwing people under the bus, like getting mad at Kyle Kalinske for not condemning Jank Uyghur and Anna Kasparian on Twitter.
That's dumb. Why do you need to drag other people into it for?
You betrayed me because you haven't insulted the people I don't like, who I feel wronged by.
So dumb. But anyway, yeah, it was just fucking James Lindsay's bullshit had been ruffling my feathers for a while. I don't know, some people are just like religiously on his side. Like, he's like the most knowledgeable person on critical race theory because he spends 16 hours a day reading.
And angrily tweeting about it and cherry picking.
Yeah, it's dumb. Like,
I can tell whenever people get mad at me for criticizing him in the comments of a YouTube video or something like that they haven't read any of these fucking books, man. Like, they're just taking what he says on faith.
Yeah, none of these people read any of this stuff. It's like, you can have a well-balanced critique of CRT. Like, there's some definitely stuff in there that I don't agree with.
Well, and one of the things that's so fucking stupid about what James Lindsay is saying is that you can find like a bunch of Marxists right now who criticize critical race theory because they think it doesn't focus on class enough, and other reasons too. Like, there's no good. It's not like It's not like critical race theory and Marxism are the same thing. You know, in many ways, they're in opposition to each other, or at least they're not. They're different ways to approach similar problems.
Well, on the right, the trick is to swap out something and call it Marxist.
Yeah,
just
basically.
Yeah, you take out class and you put a race and it's Marxist.
Yeah.
Like, so are we talking about class struggle? You mean because there's struggle against people of different races, we're calling it Marxism? So is Darwin's theory of evolution, is that also Marxism? Like,
Apparently.
fuck. Like, when species struggle with the environment, you're just taking out class and putting like species.
Yeah.
Let's call this fucking Marxism too.
Yeah.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, it's nothing you can do about that because people are just not going to. People just take other people's word for shit. It's and they get manipulated. That's just how things go.
Yeah.
And it just makes me mad.
It's
That's
easy
an
to
obvious political
sound
manipulation.
it's easy to sound convincing to people. That's why like James Lindsay just sounds like Alex Jones now. You can sound convincing to people if you just emit a fire hose of verbal diarrhea of like, here, let me say this thing, and these 20 other things that are completely disconnected points and connect them together and form this into this whole elaborate conspiracy theory that I've constructed. That's totally true.
Yeah, I read blah 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 blah, and on paragraph 5 it says this. And it's like, well, what's the fucking context of that? It's like he strings all of this shit together and creates his own narrative, and he's trying to like mind read all these people and saying that, oh, this is just Marxism.
Yeah.
And hey, Marx probably had some good ideas. That's why I need to go investigate it.
I think he had some. Even if you don't think he had that much worthwhile to say, his thoughts were much more sophisticated and complex than the way a lot of people present them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like what? If you're anti-Marxist, you have to be against labor unions and shit, right?
Why?
Like, I don't know. Don't you? If you're like an anti-Marxist, like, don't you have to be against unions?
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm pretty sure that there are some Marxist ideas that have been implemented within our own society. It's just nobody would ever admit to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a headache, man, dealing with that shit. Headache dealing with like the people who are just blind believers and will believe every little thing that someone says and not disagree with it. There's just so many of those types of people. Oh man, James Lindsay is the academic god of critical theory.
Yeah.
Critical theory is Marxist, DRT is Marxist, and all of this stuff is Marxist.
Yeah.
It's like that one lady, there's like this clip of this woman named Anita Sarkeesian.
Oh, I've heard before. Gamergate stuff, right?
Yeah, there's this clip of her saying, like, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you just have to point it all out. It's like basically the same thing. That's basically what James Lindsay's job is that everything is Marxist, and I just gotta point it all out.
Yeah, exactly.
And he just looks crazy now. I don't know.
Yeah, he does.
He just looks like something's wrong with him.
Like on the verge of having a fucking
I don't
rage
think
fit
I've
and
seen him
mental
smile.
breakdown.
Like I have not seen
Yeah.
him smile in the past 5 years.
Every time he talks about it, it's like critical race theory is trying to take over the world and destroy America and turn it into a communist China.
Like I wonder what some of his former colleagues, like this Peter Boghossian, still have nice things to say about James Lindsay.
I think that he seems to kind of agree with his takes about that sort of thing. I would say he has his own little YouTube channel.
Yeah,
where
but I
he's
don't
doing,
think Peter Boghossian is into like anti-vax and stolen election shit.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. Like, I was just thinking similarly also that I think I heard something about how Helen Pluckrose criticized she criticized James Lindsay for explicitly voting for Trump to ban CRT because she kind of has like a similar take on, you know, critical theory and critical race theory and stuff, but she doesn't think that this should be a reason to vote for someone like Trump because she actually, unlike James Lindsay, is a liberal. And like I bet you're right about Peter Boghossian in that he probably hasn't gone all like jumping the shark with his views, going all anti-vax, and they're trying to do all this other crazy shit and like the Great Reset and stuff like that. I bet.
Yeah, like he's kind of James Lindsay has been biting into like the right-wing talking points. He's like turning towards the grift. I think did you ever see that documentary I sent about Tim Pool?
Yeah, I watched that. That was interesting. I like that
Like it's
guy's
kind
channel.
of a similar type of deal where he's basically producing content for an audience that he knows gonna like slop it up, I guess.
I watched that guy's videos that were criticizing Dave Rubin also. Did you see that in that Josh Zepp's Joe Rogan episode where he was criticizing Tim Pool in one part a lot, and then a few podcasts later, like in one of his even more recent ones, one of his guests commented on that, and Joe Rogan said something like, yeah, you know, he's in Australia. Maybe he's too absorbed in that stuff to see how crazy it is. Yeah, I don't get his criticism of Tim Pool. He's a good guy and he's not a grifter or anything like that.
When was that?
Yeah.
When did you hear that?
Like I'm one of the most recent episodes. He was kind of like Rogan was giving that criticism of Josh Zepp's criticism of Tim Pool.
So he was talking about Josh Zepp's criticism of Tim Pool. Do you know which episode that was from?
I don't remember which one it is. I could look
It's not the Josh Zepp's episode, is it?
No. It's definitely after the Josh Zepp's episode. I don't think it was I don't think it was either of the last two, the Robert Epstein or the James Lindsay one. Maybe it was I think it was either the Ben Patrick one, the knees over toes guy, maybe, or maybe it was actually, you know what? I think it was maybe the one with Philip Franklin Lee, who's the restaurateur guy. I think it was maybe that guy. Or it could have been. I'm pretty sure it was that guy, but it was either that one or the one with Ari Shaffir, Shane Gillis, and Mark Normand. It was one of those two.
But it was before or after Zepp's appeared?
It was after Josh Zepp's.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did
Because
Josh Stepps make that criticism on on that show?
yeah, and then a few Rogan episodes later, Rogan criticized Josh Zepp's take about it when one of his guests brought it up. Like I said, I don't remember which one of those people it was, but it was either that restaurant guy, Philip Franklin Lee, or it was the comedian one he did with Ari Shaffir, Shane Gillis, and Mark Norman, both of which were like a couple or so episodes after the Josh Zepp's episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to check it out because I don't know. I just haven't been listening to a whole lot of Rogan. I just wait until he has like a guest I'm interested in.
Yeah,
And
I
I've
don't listen
listened to
to
some of
all of
the
them.
other like crazy. Like I listened to some of when he had these crazy doctors on.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Until
listen
they
to
started.
those. I listen to those just to, not get too biased about my information about vaccines and stuff.
Oh, okay. He had H.R. McMaster on his fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ. I'll have to check that one out. Did you check that one out?
Yeah, that one was fairly interesting. It was all right.
Wasn't he in the Trump administration?
Yeah.
Does he talk shit about Trump or anything like that?
I think he pretty much talks favorably about all of the different presidents that he worked for.
Oh man. That's pretty crazy that they had McMaster on.
Yeah.
Huh. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he came on there because he apparently has a new book coming out soon.
And we had Jim Gaffigan on. He had Oliver Stone. Man, I guess I just haven't been paying attention. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know he had Carrot Top on.
Yeah, some of them were interesting. Yeah, the Carrot Top and Jim Gaffigan episodes were good too. And the Oliver Stone one was interesting. He's really hardcore into the JFK conspiracy theory shit. I don't entirely agree with all of his takes about it, but it's definitely interesting. And I want to watch that documentary of his that he made. Because he made a recent, 4-hour-long documentary about JFK.
Because the last, according to my Spotify, the last episode I fully listened to was Matt Taibbi.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even do the Tim Pool one. I used to like him until he just got kind of weird and grifty.
Yeah, I remember I started paying attention to him because you recommended him to me, and then he gradually got more and more grifty.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up for the night because I actually want to immediately listen to the Josh Zapp one, see how that one is.
All right. Cool, man.
But I
Thanks
forgot
for
about
talking.
Josh Zapp. He's an interesting guy because I remember I used to listen to some of his podcasts, and I remember he interviewed Brianna Wu, who was an anti-Gamergate personality.
Okay.
And I remember she got pissed off and no, there was this other super woke girl who accused somebody of cultural appropriation, and she got kind of laughed off of the show. I'm gonna see if I can find a YouTube clip of it because you're gonna be like, "What the fuck? This girl's crazy."
Oh, you know what else I should watch? Someone I didn't even click on the link, but in the comments of I think that my criticism of James Lindsay on his last Joe Rogan podcast that I posted in the Mixed Mental Arts group, someone posted that infamous clip that I didn't watch yet of apparently James Lindsay losing his shit on a TV show. Did you hear about that?
He was on Dr. Phil apparently.
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of educators talking, and then they brought in Lindsay, and he basically talks a mile a minute about this conspiratorial bullshit. And it's funny, at the end, one of the people who was on that panel, all they said to James Lindsay is they don't teach CRT at K through 12. That's all she said to him. And then they went to commercial. I was like, oh, that is hilarious.
That's a great one-liner to go to commercial on.
So I'm gonna go send you the link to this Josh Zepps interview with the super wokester. This is kind of what put me on his radar. And I was
Okay.
like, oh, this guy's like pretty funny and cool. He's like this gay Australian dude. Give me a
Cool.
second. And I'll
Sure.
send it to you.
All right.
But he used to work for HuffPo, which is like, HuffPo. That's like the wokest of the woke. But he's not.
Yeah, that
which is
got
weird.
super woke.
Yeah.
All right.
HuffPo isn't even really a thing anymore. I never see anybody sharing HuffPo articles.
That's a good point. I don't really either. Yeah, I
It
just
kind of
got your
dropped
link.
off the map. Yeah, check that one out. It's funny.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, you take it easy. Next week we'll do the Wheel of Time thing. And you have
All
a
right.
great night. Everybody like and subscribe and check out our content. Sorry about the long, meandering political rant at the end. But hey, that happens sometimes.
Yep. All right. Adios until next time, everyone.
All right. See you guys.